This is J. Krishnamurti's second public talk in New Delhi, 1966.
If we may, we'll continue with what we were talking about the other day when we met here. We were saying how urgently it's important that a total revolution in consciousness should take place. And we pointed out how throughout the world there is a general decline, a deterioration, moral, ethical, religious decline. This is observable. This is not a matter of personal opinion. Because we are dealing not with opinions, but with facts. And these facts cannot be possibly understood if we approach them through any sense of personal inclination or temperament, or responding immediately to environmental influences. We said that there must be a radical transformation, a mutation in the mind. Because man has tried every method, both outwardly and inwardly, to transform himself. He's gone to the temples, churches, mosques. He has tried various political systems, economic order. There is great prosperity, and yet there is great poverty. Man, in every way, through education, through science, through religion, has tried to bring about a radical mutation in himself. He's gone to the monasteries, he's given up the world, he has meditated endlessly, repeating prayers, sacrificing, following ideals, pursuing teachers, belonging to various sects. He has tried, if one observes through history, everything he can possibly try to find a way out of this confusion, this misery, this sorrow, this endless conflict. And he has invented heaven. And in order to avoid hell, which is punishment, he has done also various forms of mental gymnastics, various forms of control. He has tried drugs, sex, innumerable in ways that very clever mind has thought out. And yet man throughout the world has remained as he was. Man has inherited the animal instincts, and most of us still have the animal instincts of greed, proprietorial rights and sexual rights and so on and on. The inherited, we are the result of the animal. And we have tried to escape from this. Escape consciously or unconsciously. And yet we remain what we are. slightly modified through pressure, through environmental influences, through threat, through necessity. We have somewhat changed here and there, but essentially we remain what we are. Deep down, we are aggressive, violent, greedy, envious, brutal, violent, which is being shown throughout the world and what is taking place in this country. After years of preaching an idiotic philosophy of non-violence, because man is violent, and the ideal of non-violence is only an immature approach to violence. What is important is to face the violence and understand it and go beyond it, not invent and escape an ideal called non-violence which has no reality whatsoever, which is being shown in this country and elsewhere. So we see this objectively, clearly, the necessity for man's total change. I think everybody intellectually is agreed on this point. Any serious man with deep intention, earnest, honest, not deceiving himself by theories, dogmas, is concerned with this. How is it possible, if it is at all possible, for a human being, whether he lives in Russia, America, here or elsewhere, whether it is at all possible to bring about a total mutation so that man lives differently, not like an animal, everlastingly in battle, destroying each other, in conflict, in misery, in sorrow, always fearful, uncertain, always waiting for death, with all the pain, anxiety, guilt, and all the rest of it. And they have invented various philosophies. And the psychologists, with their analysis, have helped a little bit here and there. But the problem still remains. Is it possible to uncondition man totally, so that he lives in joy, in clarity, without confusion, without conflict? Now, having stated that problem, which I think is clear, the basic problem, what can one do actually? One sees the problem of man's conflict, his brutality, his anxiety, his jealousies, his ambitions, his desire to hurt others, creating enmity, ultimately war. Is it possible to change this consciousness into something that is entirely different, that is not an ideal, that cannot be foreseen, that is not a premeditated result? You understand? Because if this mind which is confused, which is brutal, which is ugly. If this mind can project an ideal, a future, it will be according to its own pattern, only modified. And therefore, the ideal, the purpose, the ultimate change in terms of what it is still what is. Is it not? You see the problem. If I am confused, and out of that confusion I imagine clarity or create an ideal of clarity, it is still the result of confusion. And therefore that so-called clarity, so-called ideal, so-called ultimate purpose will be the result of a confused mind, and therefore still confused. Please see the importance of this. Because we, caught in this cage, in this trap of civilization, so-called civilization, we're always projecting an idea. What should be a philosophy, a doctrine. And we are pursuing that, each according to his conditioning, each according to his belief, according to his religion, according to the climate, circumstances, inclination, and so on, so on. So out of this he creates a future. And that future has its roots in the present. The present being the past. So, as long as the mind is capable of creating a formula for itself for the future, that formula is the result of the past. Of the past experience, past knowledge, past information. And therefore, the future, the ideal is still the condition. Is still the result of what has been. And so, to change from what is to what should be is still what is, though modified. Please do understand this extraordinarily clearly, not only verbally but actually. And that's where listening comes in. Because one can communicate verbally, as we do just now. We all, I hope, understand English. And we are communicating verbally. You are translating what I say into your own language, or hearing the words. And hearing the words is not actually listening. When you listen, not only to the words, but when you actually listen, your whole attention is there. Otherwise you cannot listen. And when you give your whole attention to any problem, there is not only efficiency, clarity, a reasoned out outlook, but you go beyond it. And that's what we are doing now. We are not only creating, not only communicating verbally, but also together we are listening to what is true, not according to anybody. Truth is not Christian, Hindu, yours or mine. It is the fact. And to observe that fact, you not only have to listen intently to that fact, but prevent all translation of that fact. Because if you translate, you are translating it according to your conditioning, according to your memories, according to your inclination, your tendency, according to the pressure of circumstances. Therefore, in that state, you're not listening. And I hope this evening we are listening actually to facts, not to opinions, not to any conclusion. As we were saying, there must be a radical revolution, a mutation of the mind. Because man has lived 2 million years, according to the biologists and the archaeologists, and more, in misery, in sorrow, in conflict, killing each other, destroying each other, creating enmity. Religions have said, don't kill. Religions have said, love one another. Be kind, be generous. And religions have cultivated belief, organized propaganda of belief, dogma, rituals. They are not concerned with man's behavior, actually concerned. And what we are concerned with is man's actual behavior from day to day. Because man must live in peace. Otherwise he cannot do anything. He may go to the moon, but in his laboratory he is at peace, and therefore he can invent, he can look. But we are not at peace, neither at home, nor in the office, outwardly or inwardly. And therefore we are confused, we are frightened. And so, this radical change is essential. And we said, not according to a pattern. Please follow this. Not according to a pattern. Not according to some future ideal or some utopia, which are the inventions of a mind that is being conditioned and wishes to free itself from its conditioning and invents a philosophy, an ideal, a purpose, which is the result of its own confusion and conditioning. That's clear. Therefore, the change must take place immediately. We have divided time as the immediate and the ultimate. Please, I'm not going to go into details because it's too complex and I haven't time. But one can see what we have done. I see, or we all see, the immediate necessity of change. We see that. then we say, it is not possible to change immediately. I'll have to have time. I need days to bring about this change. Put it round the other way. There are the immediate problems of this country. Starvation, disorder, inefficiency, corruption, and the immature quarrels over a piece of land or all the rest of it, burning each other or burning oneself and so on and so on. And the immediate everyone reacts to. We must do something about the immediate. It's all right to talk about the ultimate, but the ultimate is not so important as the immediate. And with that conception, with that formula, we live. That the immediate is far more important than the ultimate. Right? Isn't that so? You put it in different ways, but that is what is happening. The politician is concerned with the immediate. And the reformer, and the so-called social workers, everybody is concerned with the immediate. Not with that thing which he calls ultimately may be all right, but immediate matters. So he has divided time as the immediate and the future. But the ultimate contains the immediate. The immediate does not contain the ultimate. So a man who is concerned with the immediate, he is the real mischief maker. Whether it be a politician, a religious man, a reformer, and so on. But if he understood the ultimate, in the ultimate is the immediate action. So, as long as we divide time as yesterday, today, and tomorrow, as long as we think in terms of the immediate, which is the environment, the circumstances, to which you must answer immediately, like the politicians, like all the people are doing throughout the world, then what takes place? You're following, I hope you're following all this. You know, one is not used to giving one's attention for a long period. You give perhaps your attention for 2 or 3 minutes, and the rest of the time you just casually listen. Therefore you don't take it in. And we're discussing a very serious problem. And to understand it, to go with it, to flow with it, you must give your whole attention all the time that you are here. Not a periodic, a minute or two, and then wander off. Because what we are dealing with demands a total capacity, a total attention. When you divide time as the immediate and the ultimate, you are not only creating conflict between what is and what should be, right? but you're also creating an environment, circumstances which will be in contradiction to what it should be. Now, time is a movement which man has divided into yesterday, today and tomorrow. It's a movement. And as long as you divide it, you must always be in conflict. Please, this is important to understand, because what we are going to go into, if you do not follow this, I'm afraid you won't be able to follow what comes after. Because we are concerned with change, with total mutation in the whole of consciousness. And consciousness is conditioned to think in terms of yesterday, today and tomorrow. And it thinks in terms of change as what is and what should be, and therefore what should be demands a further time. Right? So change never takes place. You understand, sir? Right. I say, I'm sorry, I see I don't understand. Right, let's proceed. When we think that we are changing from this to that, that movement is static. It's not a movement at all. What actually has taken place is this. I want to change from this to that. That is projected by a mind that is caught in what is. And out of that confusion, out of that misery, out of that pain, has created the future. So the future is already known. And therefore, when the mind moves from what is to what should be, that movement is static. It's not a movement at all. Therefore, it's not a change at all. You understand? Now, wait a minute. We do not like to talk in examples. I'm not good at it, but we'll try. Man is violent. That there is no question about it. Violent in so many different ways. And that's a fact. He may occasionally be non-violent, but his whole structure, psychologically, is based on violence. His ambition, his desire for power, position, domination, assertion. Attack that thing which he calls ownership, it gets violent. Sex and so on, so on. His whole structure is based on violence. And that is a fact. Then he invents a non-violence, an idea, a theory, which is non-factual. It's just an idea. And he says, I am violent and I will move to non-violence. I will change from this to that. That change, that movement towards the ideal is no movement at all. It is just static. It's merely an idea. What is actually is violence. So, when he pursues the ideal, he is avoiding the actual. And what he calls the ideal and the pursuit of the ideal and the practice and all the discipline is merely a mind that has become static, that has become dull, that is not living. What is living is violence in different forms. So, the ideal has no importance whatsoever. And this is a very difficult pill to swallow for most people. Because we have lived on ideals, we have been fed on ideals. We are conditioned to think in terms of ideals, in terms of purpose and significance and so on and so on. So there is only this fact. And non-violence is not a fact. And when he says, I will ultimately become non-violent, what he actually is doing is sowing the seeds of violence, thinking ultimately he will be peaceful. He will not. That's fairly obvious. So, as long as one thinks in terms of the future, of bringing about a change in terms of an ideal, in terms of what should be, he is merely continuing living in violence, and therefore such movement has no value whatsoever. Right? Is this clear? Therefore the problem arises, how is a mind that is violent or greedy or whatever it is, greed, envy, ambition, competition, aggressiveness, all, and also the so-called discipline which is imposed, which is conformity, is part of this violence. How is that violence to be totally changed so that it is no longer violent? Not in terms of time, not in terms of a future ideal. Right? Is that clear? Am I making myself clear? Sorry if I'm not. You understand the question now? My mind is no longer distracted or taken away, wasting its energy on ideals, what should be and what should not be. It's completely attentive to that one problem, in which many other problems are involved. So, there is no ultimate or the immediate. There is only that problem, right? It's like a man having cancer. He has to decide immediately. And the immediate decision doesn't depend on his fancy, on his environment, on his family, or what people say or don't say. It is an immediate urgency. And therefore, when it is immediate, there is an immediate decision. Not decision in terms of mind wanting to act upon the fact. So, time as the means of overcoming or destroying or going beyond the fact has come to an end. You understand? Time as a means of change has come to an end. You're following this? Therefore, time as will come to an end. Right? Will is time, isn't it? I will do this. The will is the result of determination, inclination, desire, all that is involved in that one word. And when I say I will become peaceful, the very assertion I will implies time. And when he asserts I will become, the movement to become is static, is non-alive, it is not alive, it is something dead. So, will and time have been put aside. Please see the importance of this. Because we are used to assertion. We are used to say, I will do this. I must do this. I should do this. All that implies time, doesn't it? Obviously. The will, the should, the must is a future tense of the word to be. The word to be is always active present. Right? And therefore, when a man asserts he will do that, what is taking place is that he's using time as a means of achievement. And the means and the end is projected by the mind that is conditioned, and therefore the end is still what is. Right? Sorry if it gives you a headache. It's really quite simple. Man has lived by will and time. And we see will and time have not changed man at all. That has been his favorite game of escape. He invents the future, next life, all the rest of it. And so he remains what he is. You may believe in reincarnation, as most of you do. And if you believe in reincarnation, what matters is how you live now, not what you're going to do tomorrow. But you don't believe in it to that extent. Just a theory, a convenient hope, a pleasant idea, and therefore no value at all. So when you have eliminated time as will and time altogether, you have only this problem. You understand? You have only one problem. Because then you are full of energy to tackle this problem. To come to grips with this problem, which is a total revolution in the mind. And that total revolution, which is not ultimate, but which is immediate, and when there is no time as a means of achievement and will as a way to that achievement, then you have only the central issue: how can the mind, which is so conditioned, change, bring about a mutation, complete mutation, right? That means a mind that is no longer struggling to achieve. You understand? No longer struggling to become something. It is what it is. Greedy, envy, ambitious, full of hate and envy, all the animal things that have been cultivated and prolonged throughout centuries. That is what actually is. And any effort to bring about a change in that structure of the human mind is still part of the time, and therefore is ineffective. So what happens to your mind that is no longer thinking in terms of time, will to achieve? We can explain, the speaker can explain what takes place, but it will be merely words. But if you do it yourself, you will see what an extraordinary action takes place. When you have abolished time, you understand? That means no longer yielding to circumstances, no longer concerned with personal inclination or tendency, no longer using will as a means of operation. If you do it, not theorize about it, actually do it as you would do when there is an urgency of disease or of a threat, do you act immediately? Then there is no action of will or time operating. Then you will see that total action, not fragmentary action of will and time, a total action contains an immediate action to circumstances. Right, sir? Look, sir. There is starvation in this country. Overpopulation, total inefficiency of government, and that starvation, each politician, each group wants to solve it according to his pet theory. The communists, the socialists, the Congress, the etc., etc. They have theories how to solve that problem. Right? They will take this side or that side. They'll go to America or to Russia according to their theories. But in the meantime, people are starving. Right? You may not be starving, but there are people starving. Probably we have all known what it is to have not enough food. So, the problem of starvation is not to be solved by politicians. It never has. It's a world problem. And the world is divided by politicians, by the tribes which they represent. The American tribe, the Hindu tribe, the Muslim tribe, the African tribe. We're all tribes. We all belong to tribes. which is again a fact. So as long as the mind thinks in terms of tribes, in terms of formulas, starvation will go on. Oh, for God's sake, see the simple facts. As long as you are a Hindu, with your nationalities, with your separate governments and all the rest of it, you are going to have starvation. Because each group thinks it wants to solve it in its own way and will not cooperate with the other. Communist is not concerned with the starvation of the people, nor the Congress, nor the Democrat or the Republican. They're not concerned. They want to be in power, in position. To solve the problem of starvation, we must be concerned only how to feed the people, not who is going to feed the people, what is the system that's going to feed the people, and so on, so on, so on. And nobody is concerned with solving the problem. So, when you are concerned with solving the problem, then you're not concerned with the system at all. Please see this. In the same way, when you are concerned with the problem of a total change, you're not concerned with how to change it. Right? You never will ask how. Because the how is a method, and the method implies time, practice, and the end result is already known, towards which you are practicing. And therefore it's not a change at all. So all that one can do is to be totally aware of the function of will and of time, and be totally indifferent to it. Not battle against it. See the falseness of it. Then you will be only concerned with that one central issue, which is how to bring about a total revolution. And when you are tremendously concerned with it, you will find that it is taking place without your wanting it. Perhaps if there is time, you'll ask questions. We can discuss this. And if you're going to ask questions, please be brief, because I have to repeat them. Don't make long speeches.
Sir, is that state possible? Is that state possible?
The gentleman asked, is that state possible? The state which I have been talking about, isn't that right, sir? Now, when you ask that question, is it possible? Are you asking out of curiosity? Wait, sir, just listen. Are you asking out of curiosity? Or are you asking it because you doubt it? Or in your own mind, there is a feeling that it's not possible. If you say it is not possible, then you are blocking yourself. You are preventing investigation. If you say it is possible, that also will prevent you from investigating. Naturally. You're already biased. So, to find out if it is possible or not, you have to work. You have to investigate, you have to examine. And to examine, you must be free. If you are biased, if you are inclined, if you are this or that, you are not free to investigate, to go into it. But to go into it is not a matter of time. You must give your whole mind and heart, your nerves, everything you have to it. But you see, we are not so eager, intense, because we need to go into it tremendous energy. And you can only have energy if there are no distractions. That is, not worldly distractions, I don't mean all that. Distractions which the mind has invented not to face the fact. The fact being what you actually are. Your violence, your greed, your envy, your competition, your brutality, your wanting to achieve, become somebody, all the rest of that. To face that fact. And that demands complete energy. And that to face that, no time, no will, all that has to be put aside and look. That's why, sir, it's very important to know how to look, how to observe. Probably you have never observed a tree. Probably you have never observed your wife or your husband or your daughter. You have observed through the image you have built about your wife. And the wife looks at you through the image she has built about you, the image being memories. So we have looked at each other through the image that each one has created about the other. And therefore there is no observation at all. You look at a tree because you have an idea, an image, a symbol, a meaning about that tree. And therefore the meaning, the symbol, the idea interferes with your observation of that tree. To look, there must be freedom from all the image. And when you're free, you look not with intellect or emotion, with love, with clarity, with something totally new. You look at your children, your wife and your husband without the image, and you will then be in real relationship. And real relationship is affection, love. Without that, do what you will, there'll be misery, there'll be sorrow. What were you going to say, sir?
What is the role of memory and the state you are just talking about? What is the role of memory?
Right, sir. What is the role of memory and the state we are talking about? Again, this is a rather complex problem. And all human problems are complex. They are not mechanical. Therefore, one has to think about it anew. What is the function of memory? And how does memory come into being? Before we can discuss what is the function of memory, one must find out how memory is built up. Right? Have you ever noticed that when you respond to something entirely, totally, there's very little memory, right? Have you? Oh Lord. Huh? When you respond with your heart, with your mind, with all your being, there is very little memory of it. Haven't you noticed it? It is only when you don't respond to a challenge completely, then there is a conflict. Then there is a pain, then there is a confusion, then there is a struggle. The struggle, the confusion, the pain or the pleasure builds memory. This is simple, so you can observe it in your daily life. Now, you develop memory through technology. You go to college, learn a certain technique, because that technique gives you a job, and that cultivates a memory. Because that memory is necessary to function efficiently in a particular job. That memory you must have, obviously. Otherwise you can't function. Right? But we have psychological memories. What you have said to me, how you have hurt me, you have flattered me, you have insulted me. You have psychological memories. The images which I have built up about you and you have built about me, those memories remain. And those memories are added to all the time. And it is those memories that respond. Therefore, thought, which is the response, which is the result of memory, thought is always old, never new. Oh, right? Therefore, never free. There is no such thing as freedom of thought, which is sheer nonsense. So memory has a place when we are functioning efficiently, and efficiency is necessary and memory is necessary at a certain level, and when memory becomes a mere mechanical action with regard to relationship, in human relationship, then it becomes a danger. Then it creates mischief. And from that memory, all the tribal instincts are part of that memory. You are a Hindu, you are a Muslim, you are a Christian, you are a Catholic. You have learned this, the machinery of conditioning. There it is deadly. Because life is a movement. Life is not something that you carve out for yourself in a little backyard. Life is a total movement, endless movement. Not an evolutionary movement. That's one of our pet theories too. Eventually man is going to become perfect. In the meantime he can sow hatred. In the meantime he can create havoc. So memory has a place, and when you function there, naturally it has to be efficient, reason, impersonal, clear, all the rest of it. But there is a state of mind where memory has very little place. Though we are talking now, we are using the language of English language. The usage of English language is memory, obviously. But the state of mind that is using it is silent, is not crippled by memory. Oh, And that is real freedom. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Where the soul
Wait, sir. Not too long, sir. I have to repeat the question. You have talked about unconditioned mind. Is there a way? Listen to the question. Is there a way, a method to achieve that unconditioned mind?
without talking,
Huh?
without talking,
Without?
talking about it. Because you are not able to.
Without talking about it. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't matter. Is there a way to uncondition the mind? Now, there are two states. The usage of the... So, first of all, one must be very sensitive to words. Sensitive, alive. Feel the words. If you're not, then you'll use any old word and it has no meaning. When you use the word conditioned and a way, has one understood the word conditioned? Is the understanding merely verbal and therefore not real? Merely intellectual understanding of that word, which means to free the mind from its conditioning. The dictionary meaning. And if you use that word in a dictionary meaning, it has no depth to that word at all. Right? But if you say, look, I have found, I am conditioned. I've discovered it. I see it. I was aware this morning for a minute, and I was aware how conditioned I am. I think in terms of a Hindu, or I think in terms of hate or jealousy, conditioned. Then, when you use that word conditioned, then it has a vitality. Then it has depth, it has a perfume, a quality. And when you use the word way, what is implied in that word? A way from this to that. A path, a method, a system, which by practicing you will be able to uncondition yourself to arrive at a state of non-conditioning. See the question. You've understood the question? That is, a method is going to uncondition. And the method will condition you. There is no method to uncondition you, for God's sake. We have played with these words. We have done all these things for centuries. All the gurus, all the monasteries, Zen, this, that, method. With the result, you're caught, you are a slave to the method. Aren't you? And therefore you're not free. The method will produce a result, but the result is the outcome of your confusion, of your conditioning. But it still will be conditioned. So when you put that question, you have already answered it. That's why I said the other day, to ask a question is very simple. But to ask the right question is one of the most difficult things. Because if you ask the right question, and you must ask questions all your life, but it must always be the right question. And if it's the right question, you have the right answer. You don't have to ask anybody.
Yes, my one question.
Is the non-violence which Gandhi tried to practice for himself, is that also to be denounced so far as he himself was concerned?
So do you remember what I said? Any practice of non-violence is violence. Right? Huh? That's a statement which has to be proved. By who? Wait, sir. Sir, you've asked a question. You must have the courtesy also to listen to the answer. Yes, sir. We're all like this. We're all so impatient.
The rest of the question I am not asking.
I know this, sir. Please, sir. Can you practice non-violence when you are violent? Violence means not only physical violence, psychological violence. When I discipline myself according to a pattern which I have established as the ideal, I am violent. You don't take all that into account. Discipline, as is practiced by most people, is a suppression, is conformity, is control to an idea, a pattern. That is violence, distorting the mind, which doesn't mean that there is not a violence, that there is not a discipline which has nothing whatsoever to do with control, submission, conformity. That discipline comes, the real discipline comes when you are confronted with the problem and you are completely concerned with the problem. So look, discipline, the right discipline, the only discipline that matters, not all the others, that comes in the very action of learning. Right? When you are learning, not acquiring, when you are learning about anything, that very act of learning demands discipline. You understand? So I'm learning a language. And I mean, it is tremendously interesting to learn a language. And that very interest is its discipline. Now, man is violent. To understand the problem of violence, to really understand it, to go into it, to go to the very end of it, to inquire into it very deeply, that very inquiry is the beginning of discipline. You don't have to have any discipline, or the so-called absurd discipline which man has practiced and destroyed himself and tortured his mind by imitating, conforming to a pattern. And I'm sorry whether Mr. Gandhi or XYZ has done it, that's irrelevant.
One question.
Wait a minute, sir. Sorry, this gentleman has been
Where
off.
the soul goes after death?
Where does soul go after death? So this very important question. Again, perhaps we'll deal with that question at the next time that we meet, because it requires a great deal of going into. Because the word soul or the Atman or whatever word you use is still part of your tradition. You repeat that word endlessly. You haven't inquired if there is such thing as the soul, which means that there is a permanent entity in you, which When you die, go somewhere. Is there something permanent in you? Have you found out anything permanent in you? Yes? So look, be clear. Is there a permanent thing in you? You are changing, your body is changing, your thoughts are changing. Unless you are dead, of course, then nothing is. Everything is in a movement, but you refuse to accept that movement. And to say there is a soul and Atman means that thought has thought about it or has invented it. If thought can think about it, it is still within the field of thought. And therefore, it is part of the old. It is nothing new. As I said, thought is always old. Therefore, soul is a word that you use without understanding or gone into, which is the result of thought. Because man is frightened of death. As he is frightened of life, he is frightened of death. Please, sir, leave that question, sir, it's for me. You're not paying attention. Sir. All right, sir, I haven't finished that question. We'll deal with it another time. Right, sir? Look, isn't that enough? Wait a minute, sir. That's enough, sir. I think that'll be enough, sir, for this evening. Look, sirs, you've asked questions. Each person is concerned with his question, and he will not listen to another question. In answering the one question, if you had listened to it, your questions will be answered. But we are so impatient. Which means what? Each one is concerned with his own little problem. And the little problem doesn't contain the big problem. When you understand the big problem, in that problem the little problem is, and then that little problem will be answered, and it will be answered rightly. So please, as I said, it's very easy to ask questions, and one must always ask questions. One must always have a spot of skepticism about everything, including what the speaker is saying. But to ask the right question demands a great deal of intelligence, sensitivity to words, and awareness of one's own conditioning. Then out of that, when you ask a question, it'll be full of light and delight.